at this point, of course, this is going to seem a little bit like prehistory because, history has rewritten itself in the past few months. But there's no question that the largest changes that have been happening in Israel with any population in Israel has been among Arab Israelis, with an increase in education, an increase in employment, changes in the types of education they're getting, changes in the types of employment that they're doing. This is, I keep telling people, I've been telling people for a while, that this is probably one of Israel's main growth engines for the near future, for the years to come, because this is a population that deeply wants to improve its economic situation, and that has the skill to do so, but hasn't necessarily had the opportunity. So this is where the changes are all happening. So if you break that down a little bit, first of all, the changes have been happening more among the women than among the men, the young women than among the young men. So take a look at, for instance, the percentage attending high school. So if you took a look 30 years ago, you would see that the percentage of women attending high school was under 60%. And today that's close to 100%. That's changed drastically. The percentage who are getting a bagrut has gone up. It has basically, take a look at the percentage who are getting their matriculation for high school in order to be able to go to college. The percentage who are doing it at a level that can get them into college has pretty much doubled for Muslim women, for Jewish women, for Bedouin women. It's really for Christian women, it was always high. But for the other parts of the Arab population, it's gone up incredibly. And that's been very, very significant with respect to their getting into college. The types of subjects that they're studying has changed significantly, where you're not getting as much education, as much healthcare as you were getting in the past. You're getting more people who are taking real sciences or social sciences or computers, and those are things that are actually going to improve their life very, very much in the future. Dropout rates in high schools have dropped down, and in fact, the Arab schools are doing a better job of maintaining their students inside schools, classrooms, than are the Jewish schools when you control for socioeconomic status, for the level of the economy in the different types of schools. Employment for women in particular has gone up. One of the goals set for in 2010, the government set goals for 2020, for this year, for employment in each of the sectors in Israel. And the goal that was set for Arab Israeli women, at the time they were about 25% working, and they set a goal of 41%. And today, well, not today anymore, because things have obviously changed over the past month, but a month ago, it was close to 40%, the percentage who were working. So basically, right on target of what was expected. So all of that is very, very good news, and there have been changes among the men also, but they haven't been as significant. There have been improvements, but that's where you still need a lot of work to get that moving upwards. So those have been the basic ideas of the trends that have been going on.
Thank you for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here with you and to share with you some of my thoughts. First of all, I used to work for the government from '94, and I quit in 2018. So it's a long time I have spent, working in the governmental offices. And you have to know that until '94, no Arabs worked, for the government or for the government offices. So I was one of the first Arabs to be employed, at the government. And I'm happy to say that today we are about 12% of the government employees are from the Arab society, which is a significant improvement. I served at the Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Finance, and after that I was at Prime Minister's office dealing with economical issues, with macro issues not related to the Arab society. And in 2008, the government decided to establish the Authority for Economic Development for the Arab minorities at the Prime Minister's office. And I was nominated in August 2008 to establish this authority and to run it. The major challenges that I had to face, that year in 2008, was, first of all, within the government, and why should we create an authority to deal with the Arab society and the government, and why should we invest in the Arab society? And you have to convince the government, the different ministries, that you are not going to replace them. You want to work with them, and to do a better work in this issue. And we have to say also that the issue of economic integration of the Arab society into the Israeli economy was not on the agenda until this year. That's one major challenge, to build the trust within the different governmental ministries. And the more difficult challenge was, the trust with the Arab society. Although I'm from Al-Ara and I'm from the Arab society, but, I used to work for the government for many years, and you are working in the Prime Minister's office. And you are, what are your goals, with this authority? What are your plans? Is this real? There is a significant and a real change in the policy of the government, because the government, and the Arab society, there was a very, very big mistrust. And so that's the major challenge that I have to deal with, at the beginning. And say, 10 years, after running this authority, we have a very strong authority of the government that deals with a significant issue, which is the integration of the Arab society in the economy. We have a lot of achievements, governmental resolutions, and as you mentioned before, I can say that the government invested more than 20 billion shekels, in reducing the gaps in employment, education, infrastructure, and so on and so on. As Avigam mentioned, there's a progress, there's a positive trends, there's a decrease in the, in the gaps between the Arabs and the Jews, but still there are gaps. Still, we have to do a lot of work, to change and to improve the situation of the Arab society. And another major achievement, I think, is the trust with the Arab society. We are working very closely. We used to work, and I used to work, I'm not at the position today, but we used to work very closely with the leaders of the Arab community, with the mayors, even with members of the Knesset, of NGOs from the Arab society, and so on and so on. And the big of the most significant success, as you mentioned before, is the approval of 922 at the government in 2015, which with about 15 billion shekels to be invested in the Arab society. First of all, I want to update you that I was nominated by the government yesterday to deal with this crisis and to help, the Minister of Interior, Ariadere. He was nominated, by the government to deal with the two societies, with the Arab society and the Haredim society, with the Corona crisis. And he asked me, to work with the government, deal with this crisis. I have to say that, this crisis is a huge crisis. I think that the government at the beginning, they didn't know, how to deal with this crisis and, how to manage this crisis. And a lot of mistakes were done, to deal with this crisis. And regarding the Arab community, at the beginning, they forgot that in Israel, there are 20% of the population are from the Arab society. We have to speak, to this society, and we have to translate even, the recommendation that we are deciding, the government in Arabic, and to make it more accessible, to the Arab society. And there's an improvement, in the treatment of the government in these issues regarding the Arab society. But still, I have to tell you that one of the issues that we are trying to deal with now, today, testing, there is a map, like a Ministry of Health, that shows you, in each one of the towns and villages, the people who are infected in Corona. So you are looking at this map in Tel Aviv as examples, hundreds of thousands. In Haifa, the same thing. In Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, and in other Jewish areas, you have, in the map, infected people. You look at Arab villages and towns like Taib and Sakhnin and Al-Fahim, nothing. No infected people. So it is not because we are, we are not infected, and the opposite, because there are not enough tests that they are doing, to see if, people are infected, yes or not. Now, in the last 2 days, we handled with this issue, and we work with the Minister of Health and with MADA, with the MADA, to provide these services, in our towns. And so they started now to do the test. And yes, you see that there are infected people also from the Arab society. So that is an example, of issues that we are dealing with. I have to say that the Arab councils for the Arab mayors and Arab leaders, and I'm working with them today, we are trying to manage this crisis. So we are starting, and I'm now sitting here, at the Galil Society offices. We opened emergency situation room that started to operate today. This emergency room is working, with the 70 Arab local governments or localities. So we are trying to figure out what are the needs of these local authorities in several issues, and to concentrate that, in our center here, and to send it to the government, to the governmental offices, Pikud Arif, and other national committees that are dealing with this crisis, and to bring and to get answers for these needs that we're getting from the field, and to translate it, to transfer it back to the field, to the local authorities, and hopefully to give solutions to these authorities.
Just want to add one thing to what Aiman said, which is all very true. And that's that we expect that the lower socioeconomic populations are going to be more harmed than the higher socioeconomic populations, because the unemployment hits them more difficult, harder. We've moved up to 25% unemployment from 4% over a 1 month period. And of course they're getting benefits, et cetera, but it leaves a harder situation. And for instance, we're trying to do a lot of online education. Well, when you have online education and you have enough computers and enough bandwidth inside of the household, then that's one thing. But if you have one computer or none and you don't have much bandwidth, it's going to be much harder for you to be able to get your kids what they need going forward. If I were to look at for a silver lining for the Arab population, it's sort of a silver lining in some ways. One of the things that's been a barrier for the Arab population in moving itself forward from an employment perspective and also from an education perspective is the lack of, or the dearth of, opportunities in the north of the country. A little bit under 50% of the Arab Israeli population lives in villages in the north of the country. And the problem is that there aren't really a lot of good employment opportunities in high-tech type of employment, in the type of employment where advanced employment that we want people to be able to move in, where they can get themselves very good income. Now, they either have to go very, very far away to the center of the country, and transportation, while it's improved a lot, is still not fantastic, or they have to settle for some other type of studies and go stay in education or stay in healthcare and not go into those employment areas. One of the things we are learning how to do is how to hold Zoom calls, for instance, is how to be able to work remotely, which is something that's becoming more ingrained in our society. It's by force. This could actually be an opportunity for the Arab society in the future to be able to work more remotely. If they can do that, if we have that ability, that will allow them to move themselves forward, even if they're living more further away than where everybody is, where all the high tech is in the center of the country. So that would I guess be the silver lining I'll be looking at.
I think that, when we look at the last decade, I think we had very positive, trends and changes in terms of economic integration of the Arab society into the Israeli economy. I mean, the government changed the policy and invested really a lot of money, relatively, to other decades, like before that, in the Arab society. And really, we're talking about, billions of shekels. Although, again, the gaps are still large, between the Arabs and the Jews, and we have to do more. But I think that was a significant change, and a lot of governmental resources were invested in the Arab society, and we see that, in the data and employment rate and educational level, and public transportation and housing and planning. There's a positive change, and as Avi also mentioned, I mean, there is a very positive change within the Arab society among, many Arab women, are attending, the universities, and they want to get like a higher degree. And we are talking about 30% of the students at the Technion, they are from the Arab society. In this crisis, you can see Arab doctors and nurses, are in the front, they're in the front of dealing with this crisis in the hospitals, together with their, friends and people from the Jewish community. So we can see a lot of, positive things and trends, and really we have to continue with that. But at the same time, I have to say, and as an Arab citizen, who worked for the government, who worked for the Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, and Prime Minister office, the same government, that gave me and approved, to me, like billions of shekels, to integrate the Arab society. The same government, it is the worst government, that deals, in political issues against the Arab society, and a lot of laws, like the national law and the Kamenetz law and other laws, that were approved at the Knesset, and and the discourse, of the Prime Minister himself and other, politicians against the Arab society, mainly in the election, period. And all these, negative issues are affecting, what we are trying to do in the economic integration process. I mean, you can't, on the one hand, provide us and say, look, I want to invest and I want to improve and want to change the situation of the Arab society, and on the other hand, to to pass laws against and to the Arab society, and that are aiming and targeting to exclude the Arab society, from the Israeli society. So I'm worried about that, about this, dissonance, in these two directions. I hope, and I'm not very optimistic, that this discourse will be lower, like in the next years, from the one hand, and I hope that the next government, will continue to invest in the Arab society. Again, this is the last year of 922. 2020 is the last year of the governmental resolution 922. We didn't invest all the money because of, you don't have government, and you have now the corona crisis. So we have to invest and to implement, 922 until the end of 2020. But we need another 5-year plan. We need additional 15 or 20 billion shekels for the next 5 years to invest in the Arab society to continue with this positive trend.
So I'll go a slightly different way. I mean, I agree with what Aiman was saying, certainly. And there is it's super important to continue investing in the Arab Israeli society. But let me when you ask me what my concern is and what my hope is going forwards, my concern will go back to the differences between the young men and the young women in Arab societies, because a lot of the women are really moving forward in incredibly large strides, and the men are not moving forward in nearly as large strides. So what you're having is a situation where Arab society is changing very, very much with respect to the balance of power between the men and women. And unfortunately, that is in some cases leading to more domestic violence. It's leading, unfortunately, to more divorce. and it's leading to changes in society because you suddenly have a very traditional society which is developing in a way which is not as traditional as they are used to, and that's causing some difficulty. And the question is, my hope is, my expectation is that the young men will catch up to the young women. In other words, that the young women will be pulling this wagon forward, and that will cause some difficulties during the period where there's large differences between them. But once the young men start catching up, and I see evidence of this happening in my own classes, I see evidence of this changing, you're going to have, I think, a much stronger society. I was once told that, if life gives you lemons, you should make lemonade. So I do think that some of this will be permanent. I think we're learning how to work remotely much better than we did in the past, and we always had the capability, but never really had the experience. And some of that experience is undoubtedly going to remain. It could change the way things move. The schooling system could change very, very significantly. You could see a lot of changes happening as a result of us having to learn how to deal with things in a different manner than we did in the past. So I do think there will be carryover. How much, your guess is probably better than mine.
The way that I'm looking at this issue is, there is a unique, situation, like in Israel. I mean, with the Arab society and with the definition of Israel as Jewish and democratic. I mean, it is not, like an easy identification, for the Arab society. But, and you have to know, I mean, we are trying, to change basic issues, like in what we are doing. You gave the example of educational system. Do you know that an Arab student at the high school, he gets from the government about 24,000 shekels a year from the Israeli minister, from the Minister of Education, and a Jewish student, he get about 40,000 shekel a year from the Minister of Education. And I mean, look at this, like gap. So we're trying to change, the allocation of, the mechanism of allocation the governmental money. I mean, that's what we are trying to do. So that an Arab, student will get the same thing, like the Jewish guy, student. I mean, regarding the separation between the educational system, we have a very, I mean, my children, they used to study in hand-in-hand school, which is, I don't know if you know that, but this is a Jewish and Arab school. I mean, you have like 12 Arab students and 12 Jewish students learning together, studying together. You have an Arab teacher and a Jewish teacher. They're operating already, I think, for more than 15 years. And the Minister of Education, they didn't adapt this model, of creating one educational system where Arabs and Jews, can study together. So I think that the Arabs, they want, to do that. But I mean, the Jewish and the governmental system is not accepting, to do this kind of acts. I think I agree. This is an opportunity, to change the system, the educational system, and to integrate more digital, tools, to the educational system, both like the Jewish system and the Arab system. The problem is, we at the emergency situation center that we have here, and we asked, what are the needs of, the local authorities in educational issues, and we got like a shocking number of 150,000 PCs, a shortage, like of 150,000 PCs among the Arab families. So you are talking about, like teaching remotely at home and so on, but we don't have enough, equipment to do that, first of all. And you have also to know that in the infrastructure, in our villages and towns, like the internet, high speed and so on, is very, very lacking. So I agree. We want that. We want to, to start to deal with this, but we have to invest in infrastructure, to enable that, and also in equipment. And by the way, we need also content in Arabic, because a lot of digital content is in Hebrew and is not in Arabic. So we have to start to build that. You have to understand, 95% of the Arab population voted, from the people who voted, voted for the Arab list. So the Arab list is representing the Arab society at the Knesset. The other political parties, they get only, very limited, votes from the Arab society. So yes, they are the representatives of the Arab society. I think my personal, opinion in this case is that the Arab society, they have to play the political game. They can't, stay behind and aside and not to negotiate with the Chol Lavan or Gans, and not even to negotiate with the Likud. You are in the political arena, so you have to talk with everyone, and to put your needs on the table, and to talk about it, and to talk also about your red lines, and the things that are principle for you, and you're not going, okay, it's okay, but sit and negotiate with everyone, and and I think that yes, we should be part of the government. Of course, not like government with Bibi. But in principle, yes, we are not born, to be in the opposition all the time. We have to change, and we have to play and to be a part of the government, maybe not now, in the future. But we have, as we did, the change in the civil issues, and we are part of the health system, and we are part of the high-tech system, and we are part of the educational system. We want to be also now a part of the political system, and to influence, on the political system. That's my opinion. And I think, by the way, there was a survey among the Arab population. Over 80% of the Arab population, they said, yes, we want to influence on the political level. And that's why you heard, Aiman and the other guys started to talking with Gantz and with the government and so on and so on. They changed their positions because the people in the streets, they said to them, look, enough is enough. We don't want to be in the opposition anymore. We want to influence and to be in the political.